Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Strong Women series. My name is Maxine Higgins, and I am so excited to have Tisha Gray with us today. She is a podcaster of a podcast called Tisha Talks, and she's going to tell us all about it in just a little bit. But first, Tisha, how are you?
I am good. I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And here's a little fun fact. I just also recorded with Tisha doing a podcast on hers. So we're swapping here.
Yeah.
So it's awesome to kind of get to see you. I know we met at Hillsong a while ago, and we've kind of been running circles around each other to kind of get this done. So I'm so excited to have you join us today. So Tisha, I love asking everybody about their name. I am just fascinated by them. So tell me a little bit about your name. Do you like it? Do you love it? Do you know what it means?
You know what? When you asked me that question, that was like the first time that I've actually looked up the meaning of my name.
Yeah.
And I found out that it means happy and joyful, right? So I'll talk about that in a minute, but I always thought my mom made up my name. Like, I know other people have the name, but I said, Mom, why did you give me this name? She said, because I like French and I thought like La was like cute. And then I like Tisha. So I did like La Tisha, and it actually has a capital T. So I never thought to like look up the meaning. I just always thought that, I don't know, she just put something together, but it actually means happy and joyful. And I don't know that just me and my regular carnal nature is just happy and joyful, but I really feel like it does explain who I am when I'm operating at God's fullest.
Wow.
Right. So I was like, I'll take it. I'll take it. When I'm moving in my space, I really try to stay like in a positive space. So yeah, that's what my name means.
Amen. Speak it into existence and speaking to who you will be. I love that. And, God did that all the time. He was like giving this kind of higher new name for people. So I love that you found that meaning out. So Tisha, tell us a little bit about your journey with God. What has that been like? Tell us anything and everything that you want us to know.
Well, wow. So I grew up in the church. My mom is like, she used to be like a deaconess, and we were in church a lot of days for a lot of hours. So I always grew up knowing God. And I can say that when I was a teenager, I had a really close relationship with the Lord. He talked to me like it was just me and Jesus, right? And as I ventured into college, I really felt like I had been sheltered. I felt like I didn't experience life. Like I just needed to do me, and Jesus was just going to sit over here for a little while I did that. And so then I ended up pregnant and I got married at the age of 20. I think I got married at the age of 20. And so I went through my state of distancing myself from God on purpose. And then as I began to grow and experience life without him, I was like, oh, I need you. I need you, Lord. But I went through a lot of things that I know that I probably would not have gone through had I not separated from him. But nevertheless, they're a part of my story, and they've kind of built me to where I am now. I actually wrote a book about it.
Oh, I didn't know you wrote a book.
Yes, I wrote a book. It's called Second Chances, and it's available on Amazon. And it really lays out that time when I was just out there trying to figure it out. But what began to happen was I began to rekindle my relationship with him. And it has just been really, man, the things that I'm doing now, I would not be able to do it apart from God. Like my whole life has just really been a faith walk. And I can kind of credit, not all of the credit, but my mom was a single mom who set that example for me as far as like faith. And I really just walked in that space. So that's kind of been like a summary of my journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. And, shout out to your mom, and shout out to sort of all of the single moms out there too, because it is difficult. It is difficult to, you want to provide the very best, and you're hoping that you can and that you do. So shout out to her for doing that. Um, Tell me a little bit, just in terms of your mission and how you feel like that has really come to life over the years. So I would say, like, we have our journey and we have our larger calling, right? Love God, love others, but everybody walks that out in a different way. So how does it work in your world?
Well, I'll say, so maybe about 4 years ago, 4 years ago, wait, no, three, maybe about four, yeah, maybe about 4 years ago, I think I was about 39, and I have a fun fact. I have 5 children. I
Ah,
have 5 children. um, and at 39, I was just kind of like, I was approaching 40, and I'm like, okay, Lord, I've always served in many capacities in church. I mean, dancing, finances, administration, like I was just always doing something. And I was always a busy person, but I didn't really feel fulfilled. Like I didn't feel like I was doing what I was ultimately like called to do or created to do. And I don't know if it was like that 40 thing. And I'm just like, what are we doing? I just felt like I was just doing for everyone else, like for my kids or, in my marriage or in the church. And I just really began to wonder, like, what is it that God has for me, as an individual, as a person. And I began to just seek him about that, and begin to really dive into, like, what am I passionate about? Like, and figuring out or understanding better my gifts, and what should I be doing in that space or with these things, aside from what I'm doing now. And so God just really he didn't give me everything all at once. He never does that, because I would never do it. I really don't work that way. He has to, like, give me a little bit or make me feel like it's not going to be as big as it is.
right.
And so I'm like, oh, I could do that. I could try that. So I started writing my book. And I was like, I want to share this story. I want to share my journey, because I wanted people to feel as if it's not over when you begin to make poor choices. But God can always turn it around. And those things are going to be a part of your testimony, but also propel you to where God has called you to go. And so I wrote this book. And after writing the book, I realized I had to market the book.
Oh,
And
the marketing.
yeah, I'm like, really? I just want to share my story. And my husband's like, yeah, so you need to start, like, doing some videos, like some 30-second videos. And I'm like, I do not want to do this. And me not knowing that it was God kind of revealing what he was calling me to do, but just like step by step. And so he started telling me to record like 30 seconds and don't do anything with it, just like record. And so I would do these little different recordings, and finally we started putting some out there. And then the next thing you know, I was like, wow, I can continue sharing my story via video. And I started a Facebook group, and at the time it was called Girl Chat. It was called, what's it called, When Passion Meets Purpose? I don't know. I've had like 4 names for it, but it was basically a girl chat live where we would come together and we would have those conversations about um, those things that, maybe we have experienced, the stuff that I've experienced. And so eventually I began to realize that God had called me to women,
Mm.
and helping them even go through that same process that I went through, as far as understanding what their purpose was and what they were created for. And understanding that, some of these passions that they have, it actually aligns to their purpose. And when you connect it together, you cannot, not just yourself will be fulfilled, but you'll be able to impact those around you. And so, yeah, so as far as my mission, um, I know it has to do with women and building community and connecting in that way and allowing us to establish healthy relationships as we're discovering who we are in Christ and who he's called us to be.
Yeah. I love that. And I totally relate to getting one piece at a time and like one little step. Like, God, don't show me everything because I'm going to freak out. I need the one next little step. So I'd love to pick your brain a little bit more about writing your book. I've talked to a couple of authors here, and I'm always in awe of the process because I have been trying to write a book for what seems like my whole life and can't quite get around it. And part of it is like, I don't know where to start. I don't know, like, what part of the story am I supposed to tell God? All of it? Like, and then I started writing all these drafts and I'm like, I don't even want to read this. Why is somebody else going to want to read it? So can you talk about kind of taking those initial steps with sort of writing your book, what it felt like? Did God give you a complete vision? Just tell us more about that.
Not at all. It took me 10 years to write that book. And I know that you journal because I think you did a video on making your own journal. So like I've been journaling since forever. And I've also been, I'm a divorcee. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of journaling going on during that time. And so initially I was venting, right? I was just like, someone's going to know what happened. Like someone's going to know this story. And so I was just venting and I ended up typing like, maybe it was like 20 or 30 pages. But I never did anything with it. And as I began to just say like, what can I do? There's something more that I should, be doing or that, I know that God has called me to. I had to look at what was in my hands, and that was in my hands, but it was not in my hands the way that it was written because I was venting. And so I sent it to, so I looked back at it and I said, you know what? I want this to show the journey going from here to there and leave. And it needs to leave with something positive. Like there has to be a positive impact. And so I had to go back and I wanted the gist of that because that's my girlfriend aspect. Like I'm telling you a story. So I need that in there. Like when crazy stuff was happening, I needed that in there, but I really wanted them to understand the gaps and the spaces in between where God kind of showed up and where there were different shifts that allowed me to be where I am now. And so it took me 10 years after I decided to write the book. It was like 2 weeks because now I'm just telling the story. So now I'm like, okay, the base of it was written, but I'm like, oh, I got to add this or oh, I got to do this. So now I'm just going back and I'm telling a story. And I think one thing I was super clear on was that I wanted it to be an encouragement. And the way that it was before, it was kind of like this jigger. Like it was just, it was just a little ratchet TV type thing. And so I knew that I wanted it to be an encouragement. So I added that part in. And it was like, I wrote it from being in that particular situation, but I added to it and edited it as the better me. Oh. And I wanted to bring that in. So I was able to add wisdom in it. Like, so I was thinking this, but what really was going on, was X, Y, and Z. So I wrote the book. I wrote the book and then I sent it to a publisher and we just did it. Like my husband was supportive. I didn't do a lot of stuff that you probably want to consider doing, like understanding my marketing, having a plan. I tend to work that way. Like God will just give me something and I just do it. Because if I think too hard into it, I'll never do it. So I kind of just jumped. That's with that faith thing. I kind of just jumped. And so I would encourage you, just start writing it.
It's funny because I'm in this poetry class workshop thing that I do. And yesterday we were talking about like the ins and outs of publishing your work. And they were just talking about, yeah, just for an editor alone, it could cost anywhere from 10 to 15 grand. And then for publishers, they take all the royalties and like all of these unassociated, like these costs that I didn't even think about. I was like, well, I thought I just write the book and just put it on Amazon and like, it's good to go. Let's go. So it really is incredible how much work goes into these kind of things. But I feel like if God has given you a story, right, it's our to kind of tell it. And I love the pieces of your story because so much of it is like that redeeming aspect. And even with your book, like Second Chances, that is how God works, right? So it's never too late to follow your dream, one, because I've heard people say that too, like, oh, that's for the young kids, and those are people starting out right now. It's too late to do anything. And the reality is that that's not true.
Right.
God will use you as long as you make yourself available.
Mm-hmm.
So I love that, you took the circumstances that were in your life and allowed God to work with them in a way that now you're able to actually reach out to other people, other women who are going through what you went through and able to encourage them. And also, only you can tell your story.
Right. And everybody has a story to tell.
Everybody has a story to tell. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Hey, if you were to look back throughout kind of your whole journey here, your life, what's like a life lesson that you feel you've learned?
I've learned a lot of lessons. I've learned a lot of lessons. But one more recently, I think that I was sharing with my daughter, we were having a conversation, and my husband, is that God makes a way, right? Like a lot of life is full of ups and downs. And there are things that are always going to happen that are unexpected, that are not a part of your play-by-play. And you have to know that when you're walking with him and trusting him, that he's never going to let you fall. And so one of the things that I've kind of really just taken on, even with like this faith walk, is that like, God, I refuse to believe that he's brought me this far to leave me. Yeah. So if like a door closes or if something unexpected happens, it's not unexpected to him. And so let me just realign and see, like, how did you want me to move? What do you want me to do? And so I think that the lesson is that I'm not in control of this ship, right? He's in control of it. And I have to remind myself of that. Like when stuff gets chaotic, I got so many chaotic stories, so many things. When stuff happens, I have to remember that I'm not in charge of this thing. Like, what are we doing, Lord? How do you want me to? Okay, So that is something I definitely have learned over life, and not necessarily from always thinking that way, but just from him proving himself.
Yeah.
Like when I get all chaotic about stuff, it was like, girl, why why did you do that?
So tell me a little bit more just about your podcast, Tisha Talks. Tell us how people can get connected to it, but also I'm just curious about how you started it, because I know that there are definitely people who are thinking about starting a podcast, but maybe they're nervous or they're scared to do it. So what are some of the practical things that you need to know about starting a podcast, and then where can we find yours?
Okay. So my podcast is called Tisha Talks Topics, because I think Tisha Talks was taken. So
I know what you mean. Yes. That's why we have 2 underscores in our name.
So I'm like, all right, okay, we're talking about topics. So Tisha Talks Topics. It started on a whim. Again, like if I know that something is going to be like a whole lot of work and a whole lot of things, I probably would not do it. So I was actually listening to an influencer that I follow, and she had mentioned that I think it was January 24th, it was National Just Do It Day. And so she was like, so what are you just going to do? What have you just been sitting on? I was like, I'm just going to do this podcast. And then I just did it. I didn't have a plan, which I don't recommend. I didn't have a plan. I just did it. And actually today, I published my 100th episode.
Yay!
Yeah, just from jumping, right? Just from leaping out there in faith. But I learned I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but it always, for me, just really started with me sharing my heart and sharing my voice. Because prior to that, I felt like I was very boxed in, and I felt like I had to be perfect. Like the things that I said had to be perfect. The way that I responded to people had to be like Christian perfect. And I was really, really concerned with what everybody else was always thinking. And when I got to that little aha space, 39, I was like, I have got to be who God called me to be. And it may not be for everybody. And I have to be okay with that. And so this podcast was one of those spaces where I'm like, we're going to talk about like the topics that women don't normally talk about, or that are uncomfortable, or, I just tell the truth. So I try to, my truth, I'll say. So yeah, the podcast, I'm trying to think if I'm answering all of your questions. Okay, so you asked for tips in starting. I'm actually in September going to be having a podcasters class for beginners.
Nice.
Where, yeah, I said, well, I've learned a lot. Might as well share it. But one of the tips that I would definitely give when starting a podcast is to try to narrow down your purpose, at least where you want to take your audience, right? Because I think for me in the beginning, it was very me-centered. Like I was like, I'm sharing my voice, I'm sharing my story, I'm trying. But what I quickly realized is that you've now put yourself in an influencer space, and a space to impact other people. And like, what are you going to do with it? Like you have a responsibility. And so I would definitely first try to understand where do you want to take your audience? Where do you want to take them? And then I guess my second tip would be to recognize that it is an investment of time, right? And so if you are investing your time, why not monetize it while you're doing it, right? You can still be impactful. You can still take the audience where you want them to go and walk in purpose, but you're also investing your time. So why not be smart about it, because it's the same time. And so definitely look into ways and research. I did no research. So I was telling them yesterday that by like episode 40, I had to go back. I was like, hey, other people are not doing that. I might want to start numbering these podcasts. I had not numbered them.
Oh no.
It's crazy. Yeah. I was just talking, girl. Therapeutic moments and conversations. So for me, that's just how I worked. Like God knew if I had to sit down and like start planning stuff out, I probably would be like, nope, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, so those would be my tips. There are a lot of platforms that are free. Start with those first, as you are building and deciding if it's something you really want to do, because consistency is key.
Yes, it is.
So, yeah, you got to make sure you want to do this, because people grow accustomed to it. And that's how you just build your following, by consistency.
That's so good. Consistency is everything.
Tisha,
thank you so much for coming on and just sharing with us. How can people get connected with you if they want more information or just to say hi?
Well, everything is on my website. It's www.tishatalks.org. And so you'll find the podcast there. You'll find any videos there. You'll find ways to reach me and different things that we're doing in the community. I've done several conferences, virtual ones now with COVID and everything going on. And so all that information is there. Any events that's coming up, you can reach out to me on my website. My Instagram is Tisha_talks. And you can find me on Facebook at Tisha Talks. And my private Facebook group is called Encourage Her.
Awesome. We're going to drop all of those links there below on the video so that you can go subscribe, go say hi, go follow, do all of the things that you can do. Thank you again, Tisha, for just coming here and telling us your story. And for everyone else, thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Don't forget to hit subscribe and follow us on Instagram at strongwomen_of_God. Until next time, take care.